The sun hung like a merciless eye in the bleached sky, its rays hammering down on the endless expanse of sand and rock that stretched from horizon to horizon. I was 3 days out from Tombstone, riding my faithful mare Sadie through what folks called the Devil's Playground, a stretch of desert so hostile that even the Apaches gave it a wide berth. My name's Jake Morrison, and I've been wandering these territories for nigh on 15 years, ever since the war ended and left me with nothing but memories I'd rather forget and a restless spirit that couldn't settle in one place for long. I was a drifter, a man who lived by his gun and his wits, taking work where I could find it, sometimes as a lawman, sometimes as a guide, and occasionally, when times got real desperate, on the wrong side of the law. That particular day, I was heading to Phoenix with a letter from the territorial governor himself, offering me a job as a deputy marshal. The pay was good, and Lord knows I needed the money. My water was running low, and Sadie was showing signs of the heat getting to her. Her usual spirited gait had slowed to a weary plod, and I could see the white foam of exhaustion gathering. Around her bridle, the desert stretched endlessly before us, a sea of sand dunes and rocky outcroppings that seemed to shimmer and dance in the heat. Saguaro cacti stood like ancient sentinels, their arms raised to the sky in what looked like a permanent gesture of surrender to the brutal sun. The only sounds were the soft whisper of sand against sand and the rhythmic creak of my saddle leather. I was scanning the horizon for any sign of shade or water when I saw it, a dark smudge against the pale sand, maybe half a mile off to my left. At first, I thought it might be a boulder or a dead animal, but something about the way it lay there didn't sit right with me. In country like this, you learn to pay attention to anything that doesn't belong. I pulled Sadie to a halt and reached for my field glasses, wiping the sweat from my eyes before I raised them. What I saw through those lenses made my blood run cold despite the heat. It was a person lying motionless in the sand, and from the looks of it, they'd been there for a while now. I'll admit, my first instinct was to keep riding. The desert was full of dead men, and stopping to investigate every corpse was a good way to join them. But something about this one nagged at me. The way the clothing fell, the size of the form, it looked like a woman. I nudged Sadie toward the figure, my hand instinctively moving to rest on the grip of my Colt. You never knew what you might find in the desert, and a seemingly dead body could be bait for an ambush. But as we drew closer, I could see that this was no trap. It was indeed a woman, and she was barely alive. Her dress, once probably a respectable traveling outfit, was torn and faded by the sun. Her dark hair was matted with sand and sweat, and her lips were cracked and bleeding from dehydration. She couldn't have been more than 25, with delicate features that spoke of a genteel upbringing, certainly. Not the kind of woman you'd expect to find dying alone in the Arizona desert. I dismounted quickly, my boots sinking into the hot sand as I knelt beside her. Her breathing was shallow and labored, and her skin was flushed with the dangerous red of heat exhaustion. I placed my hand gently on her forehead. She was burning up with fever. "Ma'am," I said softly, not wanting to startle her if she was. "Conscious, ma'am, can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered, and for a moment I thought she might come around. But then she went still again, and I realized I was looking at a woman who had maybe an hour left to live if I didn't act fast. I went back to Sadie and grabbed my water canteen, knowing that what little I had left might not be enough for both of us to make it to Phoenix. But I couldn't leave her there to die. Call it foolishness, call it chivalry, but something in me wouldn't let me ride away from a woman in need. I lifted her head gently and let a few drops of water trickle between her cracked lips. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, her throat worked and she swallowed. Encouraged, I gave her a little more. That's when her eyes opened, the most beautiful green eyes I'd ever seen, like emeralds in the desert sun. She looked at me with confusion and something that might have been hope. "You're going to be all right," I told her, though I wasn't sure I believed it myself. "I'm going to get you out of here." She tried to speak, but only a weak croak came out. I gave her another sip of water, and this time her voice was stronger. "You saved me," she whispered, and then, as if it was the most natural thing in the world, she added, "Thank the Lord." Those words hit me like a thunderbolt. I'd been called many things in my life: gunfighter, drifter, even killer, but never a savior. The way she said it, with such simple faith, made something stir in my chest that I'd thought was dead and buried. Chapter 2. A bond forged in fire. "What's your name?" I asked her as I helped her sit up against a nearby rock. "Sarah," she whispered. "Sarah Mitchell. I was on the stage to Phoenix. We were attacked by bandits, and I ran. I've been walking for days." Sarah Mitchell. Even in her weakened state, there was something about her that commanded respect. This wasn't some saloon girl or desperate woman fleeing a bad situation. This was a lady, through and through. "Well, Miss Mitchell," I said, "I'm Jake Morrison, and I'm going to get you to safety. Can you ride?" She nodded weakly, and I helped her to her feet. She swayed dangerously, and I caught her against my chest. For a moment, we stood there in the blazing sun, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years, the desire to protect someone other than myself. I helped her up onto Sadie, then swung up behind her. She leaned back against me, and I could feel how fragile she was, how close she'd come to dying out there in the sand. As we rode through the shimmering heat, I found myself wondering what had brought Sarah Mitchell to this God-forsaken place. She didn't belong here, that much was clear. But then again, maybe none of us belonged in the desert. Maybe we were all just lost souls, trying to find our way home. "Tell me about yourself," I said, trying to keep Sarah awake. "What brings a lady like you to Arizona?" She was quiet for so long that I thought she might have passed out. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "I was coming to teach. There's a school in Phoenix that needs teachers. I answered their advertisement in the Boston Herald." Boston. That explained the refined way she spoke, the careful diction that marked her as an educated woman. She'd come all the way from the civilized East to this wild territory, probably thinking she was going to civilize the frontier with her book learning and good intentions. "Boston's a long way from here," I said. "Yes," she agreed. "It is, but I needed to get away, to start over." There was pain in her voice, a hurt that went deeper than her physical suffering. I didn't press her for details. Everyone who came west was running from something, and most of us preferred to keep our ghosts to ourselves. As the sun began to set, painting the desert in shades of gold and crimson, I spotted what I'd been hoping for, an old mining camp called Copper Creek, huddled against a low hill. The camp was deserted, but there was a well with a windmill that creaked mournfully in the evening breeze. I dismounted carefully, helping Sarah down from the saddle. She was stronger now, able to stand on her own, though she still leaned heavily on me for support. "Is there water?" she asked, her voice tight with hope and fear. I walked to the well and peered down into its depths. The wooden bucket was still there, hanging from a frayed rope. I lowered it carefully, listening for the splash that would mean salvation. The sound came, clear and sweet, and I hauled up the bucket with hands that shook slightly from relief. The water was clear and cool, a miracle in this place of death and heat. "Thank God," Sarah whispered, and I found myself echoing her sentiment. We drank deeply, both of us, and I refilled my canteen and gave Sadie water from my hat. As night fell over the desert, I found some reasonably intact buildings where we could shelter. I built a small fire from scraps of wood, and we sat together in the flickering light. Sarah had cleaned herself up as best she could, and exhausted, she was beautiful. But more than that, there was something about her, a strength and dignity that impressed me. "Tell me about Boston," I said as we shared some jerky from my saddlebags. She smiled, and for the first time since I'd found her, she looked genuinely happy. "It's beautiful in the fall. The leaves turn all colors, red and gold and orange. Nothing like this desert. Do you miss it?" Her smile faded slightly. "I miss parts of it, but I can't go back. Not now. Why not?" She was quiet for a long time, staring into the fire. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft and sad. "I was engaged to be married, to a man my father chose for me. He was wealthy, respectable, everything my family thought I should want. But he was also cruel and controlling, and I couldn't spend my life with someone who saw me as property to be owned. So you ran away. I ran away. I took what money I had and bought a ticket west. I thought I could start over, make a new life teaching children." I looked at her across the fire, this brave woman who'd given up everything she'd ever known to chase a dream of freedom. "You weren't being foolish," I said firmly. "You were being brave. It takes courage to leave everything behind and start over." She met my eyes, and I saw something there. Gratitude, maybe, or recognition. Whatever it was, it made my heart beat a little faster. "What about you?" she asked. "What's your story?" I wasn't used to talking about myself, especially not to someone like Sarah, but something about the firelight and the vast emptiness of the desert around us made it easier to open up. I was a soldier during the war, fought with the Union cavalry. When it ended, I came west like a lot of men did. I've been drifting ever since, taking work where I can find it. "Are you married?" "No, ma'am. Never found a woman who could put up with a man like me." Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You saved my life today. That's the only reputation that matters to me." Her words hit me harder than any bullet. Ever had I'd spent so many years thinking of myself as a man defined by violence and wandering, and here was this woman who saw something else entirely. We talked until late into the night, sharing stories and dreams under the star-filled desert sky. When we finally settled down to sleep, Sarah curled up near the fire while I kept watch. But even as I scanned the darkness for any signs of danger, my thoughts kept returning to the woman sleeping just a few feet away. Chapter 3. The Price of Freedom. Dawn broke over the desert like a blessing, painting the sky in soft pastels. Sarah stirred as the first rays of sunlight touched her face, and I watched as she slowly awakened to the reality of our situation. "Good morning," I said softly. "How are you feeling?" She considered the question seriously. "Better," she said. "Finally, much better. The water and rest have helped tremendously." Indeed, she looked considerably improved from the half-dead woman I'd found in the sand. Her color had returned, and her green eyes were bright and alert. "We should reach Phoenix by this evening," I told her as I broke our meager camp. The hardest part is behind us. We mounted up and set out across the desert, but something had changed between us overnight. The easy companionship was still there, but now it was charged with something else. An awareness that what we'd shared in the firelight had been more than just conversation between strangers. The sun climbed higher, and the heat began to build again. We stopped frequently to rest in whatever shade we could find, and I made sure Sarah drank plenty of water. It was during one of these stops, as we sheltered under a rocky overhang, that we heard the sound that made my blood run cold, the thunder of hoofbeats approaching fast across the desert. I grabbed my rifle and moved to the edge of our shelter, peering out across the shimmering landscape. What I saw made my heart sink. 6 riders, coming our way at a gallop, and from the look of them, they weren't friendly travelers. "Sarah," I said quietly, "we've got company, and it's not the kind we want." The riders were hard-looking men, the kind who lived by their guns, and took what they wanted. Their leader was a big man with a black beard, and he wore a hat that had seen better days. "What do we do?" Sarah asked, and I could hear the fear in her voice. I considered our options. We could try to run, but Sadie was carrying double and wouldn't be able to outrun fresh horses. We could try to hide, but our tracks in the sand would be easy to follow. That left one choice: fight. "Stay here," I told Sarah. "Keep down and don't come out, no matter what happens." "Jake, you can't face 6 men alone. I've faced worse odds." I stepped out from our shelter and walked toward the approaching riders, my rifle held ready. The riders pulled up about 50 yards away, and their leader urged his horse forward. Well, he said, his voice carrying easily across the desert air. "What have we here? A lone traveler in the middle of nowhere." "Just passing through," I replied, keeping my voice steady. The big man laughed, a sound like gravel in a bucket. "This here's our territory. We charge a toll for safe passage, and if I don't pay..." His hand moved to rest on his gun butt. "Then you might not make it to Phoenix at all." "How much?" I asked. "Everything you got. Horse, guns, supplies, and ... His eyes moved past me toward our shelter. "And whatever you got hidden back there." He'd spotted Sarah. I could see it in his expression, the predatory gleam that meant trouble for both of us. "There's nothing back there," I said. "Oh, I think there is." He turned to his men. "Boys, why don't you take a look around?" 2 of the riders started to dismount, and I knew the talking was over. I brought my rifle up and put a bullet through the first one's chest before he could clear leather. The sound of the shot echoed across the desert like thunder. The second man was faster, but not fast enough. I worked the lever and put him down before he could draw his gun. But now the others were moving, and I was in the middle of a gunfight. With 4-to-1 odds, I dove to the side as bullets whined past me, rolling behind a large rock that offered some protection. The outlaws were spreading out, trying to flank me. "Give it up, friend," the big man shouted. "You're outnumbered." I answered with a rifle shot that took his hat off his head. He cursed and returned fire, the bullet chipping stone inches from my face. That's when I heard it. Another rifle shot, but not from the outlaws. I looked back toward our shelter and saw Sarah crouched behind the rocks, my spare Winchester in her hands. She'd hit one of the flanking riders, and he was down. "Told you to stay put," I shouted. "I don't take orders from anyone." She shouted back, working the lever like she'd been born to it. The fight was more even now. 3 against 2, but we were still pinned down. I needed to change the dynamic. I waited until Sarah opened fire, forcing the outlaws to take cover. Then I made my move. I sprinted from rock to rock, working my way around to their left flank. The big man spotted me moving and swung his rifle around, but I was already diving behind another boulder. His shot went wide, and I came up shooting. My bullet took him in the shoulder, spinning him around. But he stayed on his horse. One of the remaining outlaws broke cover, trying to get a better angle on Sarah. I put a bullet in him before he could. Fire, and he went down hard. That left just the leader, wounded but still dangerous. He was behind his horse now, using the animal for cover. "This ain't over," he shouted. "I know who you are now. Jake Morrison. There's paper on you in 3 territories. So much for keeping a low profile." I came out from behind my cover at a dead run, zigzagging across the open ground. The outlaw leader fired twice, both shots missing by inches. When I was close enough, I dove over his horse and tackled him to the ground. We rolled in the sand, both of us fighting for control of his gun. He was bigger and stronger than me, but I was desperate. Sarah's life depended on winning this fight. He got his gun free and tried to bring it up, but I grabbed his wrist. For a moment, we were locked in a deadly embrace, the barrel of his Colt wavering between us. Then I heard the metallic click of a rifle being cocked. "Let him go," Sarah said, her voice steady as a rock. "Let him go, or I'll kill you where you lay." The outlaw looked up at her, and whatever he saw in her eyes made him release his grip on the gun. I rolled away and came up with my own Colt drawn. "Get up," I told him. He climbed to his feet slowly, favoring his wounded shoulder. I could have killed him then. Should have killed him, probably. But Sarah was watching, and I didn't want her to see me as a cold-blooded killer. "Take your horse and ride," I told him. "If I see you again, I'll finish what we started here." He mounted up, still holding his wounded shoulder. "You're making a mistake, Morrison. You should have killed me, maybe, but I didn't. Now, get out of here before I change my mind." He rode away, heading south toward the Mexican border. I watched him go, knowing he was right about one thing. This wasn't over. Word would spread that Jake Morrison was in Arizona, and men would come looking for the bounty on my head. I turned to Sarah, who was still holding the rifle. Her hands were shaking now that the fight was over, but she'd held steady when it mattered. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" I asked. "My father taught me. He said a woman should know how to defend herself." She looked at the bodies scattered across the sand. I've never shot anyone before. You did what you had to do. They would have killed us both." She nodded, but I could see the toll it had taken on her. "Jake," she said quietly, "what he said about the bounty, is it true?" I holstered my gun and began checking the bodies for anything useful. "Yeah, it's true. I've got paper on me in Colorado, New Mexico, and now Arizona. I killed a man in Colorado. He was a cattle baron who thought he could run small ranches off their land. When he sent his men to burn us out, I put a bullet in him. You were protecting innocent people. Doesn't matter. The law's the law, and I broke it. Sometimes the law is wrong." We gathered our supplies and mounted up as we rode away from the scene of the fight. I couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed. Sarah rode in silence for a long time. Finally, she spoke. "Jake, I don't want to be separated from you when we reach Phoenix." Her words hit me like a physical blow. "Sarah, you don't know what you're saying. I'm a wanted man now. There'll be bounty hunters coming after me. I know exactly what I'm saying. You saved my life, and I care about you, Jake, More than I should, maybe, but I can't help it. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you're brave and decent and honorable. Sarah, listen to me. I'm not the settling down type. I don't own land or have a steady job. I live by my gun and my wits, and that's no kind of life for a lady like you. Maybe I'm tired of being a lady. Maybe I want to be something else. What? About your teaching position. Your plans for the future. Plans change. People change. I came west to start a new life, and maybe this is it. Maybe my new life is with you. I wanted to argue with her, but the truth was, I wanted it to work. For the first time in my adult life, I wanted something more than just survival. I wanted a future, and I wanted it with Sarah Mitchell. It won't be easy, I said finally. Nothing worthwhile ever is. What if we went somewhere else? Somewhere they don't know my name. Like where? California, Oregon. Somewhere we could start fresh. The idea was tempting, almost impossibly so. A chance to start over, to build something real with this woman who'd walked into my life like a miracle. It's a long way to California, I said. I don't mind long journeys, not if I'm traveling with the right person. Chapter 4. A new dawn as we crested the final hill before Phoenix. The lights of the territorial capital spread out before us like fallen stars. But instead of riding into town, I turned Sadie west, toward the setting sun. Where are we going? Sarah asked. California, I said. Like you suggested. We'll start fresh, build something real together. She leaned back against me, and I could feel her smile. Are you sure? I'm sure, Sarah Mitchell. For the first time in my life, I'm sure about something. As we rode toward the western horizon, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, hope. Maybe the desert had taken something from both of us, but it had also given us something. In return, it had given us each other. 6 months later, I stood on the front porch of our little house in the California foothills, watching Sarah tend to the small garden she'd planted. She was showing now, carrying our first child, and every morning I woke up wondering how I'd gotten so lucky. The local sheriff had offered me a deputy position when we'd arrived, and for the first time in years, I was wearing a badge on the right side of the law. Sarah had started a small school for the children in our valley, and she was happier than I'd ever seen her. Sometimes, in the evenings, we'd sit on our porch and watch the sun set over the mountains, and I'd think about that day in the desert when I'd first seen her lying in the sand. I'd hauled her out of those scorching desert sands, and seconds later she'd murmured, "You saved me. Thank the Lord." But sitting there with my wife and our unborn child, I realized the truth was far more complex than that simple moment suggested. We'd saved each other, Sarah and I, and in doing so, we'd discovered that sometimes salvation comes not from divine intervention, but from the simple human choice to stop for someone in need. Sometimes redemption isn't granted from above, but earned through the daily decision to be better than you were yesterday. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, love finds you in the most unlikely places, even in the middle of a desert, under a merciless sun, when hope seems as distant as the horizon. The desert had tested us both, but it had also given us each other. And that, I thought, as Sarah smiled at me from her garden, was miracle enough for any man. If this story moved you as much as it moved me to tell it, I'd love for you to share your thoughts in the comments below. What moment touched your heart the most? Hit that subscribe button if you want more stories like this one, and give it a thumbs up if Jake and Sarah's journey reminded you that that love can bloom even in the harshest circumstances.